Here
yeah.
we are with a very new thing. It's called a podcast, never before seen
Yeah.
in Siege.
Never seen two white guys make a podcast before.
Never. It's never happened. Like, I think there's this 5-on-5 thing, but, just never happened.
Slimer was another, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I know Greg Havner and Bikini Body made one too, so,
Yeah.
completely original concept here, but pretty much the
Yeah.
premise is there's going to be two guys sitting in a call talking about the video game Rainbow Six. This is particularly relevant because Element 1 just started, and it's already off to some entertaining stuff. So, for
Yeah,
instance,
for sure.
I guess we'll just start off with the general topic of the last Playday, because that did just happen, and we
Yeah.
saw some pretty cool stuff out of it. Like,
did.
was there anything that stuck out in your mind about, those matches or any players in particular?
Well, unfortunately, I was only able to watch one of them in depth because I had a scrim. That started a little while after those started. I will say though, I was thoroughly impressed with Dilemma, especially with the
Yeah.
addition of Cryptics and Woos. That roster just looks, I think, the best they've ever looked. And some of the
Yeah.
takes they were doing, I think on Twitter earlier, you were talking about like a
The Grim
take.
Execute. Apparently that
Like-
was improvised, but even so, like, it was a really well played use of Grim.
Absolutely.
Like, even especially given what they were doing, because for those that don't know, they pretty much just grimmed off. It was a study or a trophy statue defense on Villa. The Grim was on Astro Window. Shot the bees from split all across into trophy, and just there was a player behind the reinforced wall. They were pinged out. They had to take the fight, and of course there's info on them because of the bees. And it was a really clean execute, really great improvisation, if that's what it actually was. And Cryptics ain't shitting me. And it was just really well played, and it was a testament to how well Dilemma were playing in that match.
There's also some other stuff, like the kind of strategy of, I believe it was for my gang, was to aggressively contest the entry and just see if
Yeah.
they could win the 1v1. And even though Camden was winning most of those 1v1s in the early parts of the round, it was still fairly dangerous. So one round, the adaptation was Ozone walking up red through basement and
Yeah.
Candle jumping in mud. And initially it might just look like Ozone is trying to pull like a Benjamaster and getting fried, but it was actually a distraction so Candle could work his way in without any suspicion, and he ended up getting a 2-for-1 trade for Ozone there. So there's just a whole bunch of really excellent adaptation coming out from Dilemma in that game, even when they're winning, which is something that is thoroughly impressive.
Yeah, and I think the other part about that is it just shows that these top teams, because Dilemma was invited to this tournament for my gang qualified through the open qualifiers, these top teams like your Dilemmas, your Aerial Arises, they're coming into this, and they're coming in with an extra level of polish that you're probably not expecting from some of these other teams. Like, Dilemma had those layers to their game, FMG didn't. Like, their game plan was contest early on the entry. As soon as that stopped working, there was no
Yeah.
B plan, there was no C plan. It was just, well, did we win our gunfights? No, because they figured out our plan. Shit, we're out.
Yeah,
And
there are a lot of
uh,
teams where the strategy starts and ends with mouse 2, mouse 1, and FMG was kind of one of them. I believe they got into the close qualifiers because Reality TV were disqualified, so
that would do it.
arguably they should not be in the competition, but that is, again, only an arguable statement.
Well, if we're going about arguably teams that shouldn't have been in Element 1 in the first place, we got to talk about Slate, or
Yes,
they
we
were
do.
called the Bureau, because they shouldn't have been in the close qualifiers, but they made it in because TK's Silly Geese didn't make it in.
Yeah,
And they beat Wildcard,
they did.
which was
The-
very surprising.
That one does not surprise me all that much, if
Oh,
I'm being
okay.
honest, as Wildcard is one of those teams where they're either one of the best outside of Pro League, or they're not. And there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot of in between with them, and especially recently we've seen them falter a lot, especially when 1 HP is involved. They just don't seem to know how to adapt or figure out what's going on there.
From what I
and-
understand, young Sheldon has imbued his wisdom to me. He's dropped down from the heavens. He's divined some very particular tendencies about the team. So 1 HP specifically just has a really good read on wildcard, but also I do just think like honestly, wildcard coming into this is actually in a shakier position than I think people realize, just because of the roster
Yeah.
changes.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they've been doing this roster bingo with Dilemma over Woos and Twizzler and sometimes Kiru, and it's been going on for months. And like it's finally settled down, but I think honestly Dilemma won out that game of like
Oh, yeah.
whatever the hell was going on, and beyond that, Wildcard was a little late to the party and getting settled compared to Dilemma. So they're coming into this
Absolutely.
with a lot of like catching up to do, even though
Yes.
it shouldn't be that big of a change, but it kind of is. And like apparently, according to the broadcasters who got to do interviews with these people, with these players, the leadership structure has also changed. So I don't think they're actually as much of a top dog as people think they are.
They've been kind of like, I think there's some restructuring was probably necessary because, like I
Yeah.
said, they have kind of, I want to say fallen off because they're still very good to get to like grand finals and leagues consistently,
Yeah.
but they're not like top tier good. They're like high T3, I would say, like mid to high T3, where someone like Dilemma is, I think, pretty firmly entrenched in T2. I'd
Yeah.
say Wildcard's like high T3. Not bad at all, but they have some catching up to do. And losing Woos is, I think, a lot bigger than a lot of people realize, because that guy, like, could, I think, very honestly, go to Pro League soon.
Yeah.
And they don't have him. Dilemma has him, and they got Cryptix back, who is so good at that SMG 11 role, arguably one of the best that's outside of the NAL in this region, and it there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like I think they're gonna be good, but they're gonna need some time to figure things out, and maybe it'll be like a roster change or two down the line that kind of settles things. But I think they just need time. Although unfortunately, they're in Element 1, so they don't have time. It is
Yeah.
do or die, as if you lose 3 games, you're just done.
You're out.
Right? You're not getting to the playoffs.
I will say one thing in Wildcard's favor is that I think it was Coach Yali mentioned it on Twitter. There's effectively two levels of teams in this tournament. There's like the top teams that you're expecting to see in playoffs and that are going to make for good matches, and then there's the teams that pretty much made it through open qualifiers, give or take a few, like 1 HP, who you would have expected to be invited had it not been for like circumstances around some of their players being underage during the major quals, so they didn't qualify for like that, whatever the invitation structure looked like, or all that, or like, you know, S2, or I guess we go by Osiris now. I should know this. I work for them. But you know, like some of those orgs or some of those teams you expect to be threats, and then other ones like For My Gang or the Bureau weren't being looked at as like all that dangerous. They're being looked at a lower level. So I think Wildcard still has a pretty good chance of being like they're at the bottom end of it, but they're still on that upper level.
Yes.
So like they shouldn't get eliminated before playoffs, but this isn't a great start.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was putting them as well. Like I said, like high T3 is kind of where like I was putting them.
Yeah.
But I do think that like that start, obviously I didn't watch a ton of it as I wasn't able to because I was in scrim at the time. But from what I saw, they just looked kind of shaky.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like they were like 70% sure what they were doing, what was going on, but they weren't 100% sure what they needed to be doing at any given moment. And it felt like Slate had that extra like 10-15% on them that kind of led to that victory, because it wasn't like a stomp necessarily, because it was like a 7-4 if I recall.
And there were two back-to-back clutches in Slate's favor in the middle of that I felt really set the tempo for the tail end of that game. One was a 2v4, I want to say, and it was just really well played. And like, you know, it was really well, yeah, it was just well played. And then the second one was a 1v4. So if you lose 2 rounds back to back like that, one's a 2v4, and it's kind of like, okay, whatever. They just like used their utility really well. You know, tighten up, guys. We got the next one, and then you got 1v4 right after.
Yeah,
that's a tilter, and I hope that it doesn't get to the heads of Wildcard beyond that, because that could be the foundation to really lead to more shakes later down the line
Yep.
once crunch time hits.
Especially with people like Bry are kind of known to have game day shakes.
He actually
More
had a
than
pretty
some
good game
others.
though. He was
That's
top
good.
fragging. So
But if you have kind of that issue already, if you're already predisposed to it, and then you like lose a game in the fashion they lost theirs, that is gonna kind of get to your head, at least to an extent.
yeah.
And obviously it might not. This is just speculation on my part based off of what I've kind of seen and what I've heard. But I do think that there is some potential there for something like that to happen. And obviously I do hope they get over it because I really like that team. But
Yeah.
we just kind of have to like wait for the next few play days to kind of see how that goes, and then we can make more educated statements on that, because obviously this is off of one singular play day and a best of one, and anything could happen in a best of one.
That is true. I do want to give some props to Natural and Slate though, because
Yes.
you know, in order for Wildcard to have lost, Slate had to show up, and they
Yes.
fucking did. They showed
did.
up. They did their damage. They clutched up, and you know they came into it swinging, which they went into open quals as a pug stack. I think this is a testament to like there's some serious talent on that roster, and for those bottom of the top level teams, so like your wild cards, or maybe your carry the boats if you kind of doubt some of the talent there, which you know your mileage may vary. You know, some of these lower ranked teams that are in the top level, you should be afraid for your spot, because a Slate is very likely to be the ones to steal that spot from under you into playoffs if you're not careful and if you slip one too many times.
Yes. And I think the advantage of them being more pug stacky is that something that National mentioned in the interview you did with him was that systems can be kind of easy to counter sometimes, and a lot of teams will have those systems that they like to fall back on.
Yeah.
But Slate doesn't have something like that. They just kind of do stuff, and they communicate it with each other, and they shot call well, and then it works. And no one on that team is going to be bad at shot calling. You have Natural on that team, you have Spy on that team, right? Those are two excellent kind of like shot calling type players.
Yeah.
On the same roster, and that's really something that shouldn't be underestimated. And then Rival and Floofs are no slouch on the entry either.
No.
And Spider on this soft support role, which I believe he started playing because Fett recommended it.
He's also he was pretty good on the DMRs, not gonna lie. He was pretty nasty on the DMRs, so I don't think it's a bad place for him to be, honestly.
I agree. I do think that it is like a better place for him, and I think it also is kind of like an interesting conversation where a lot of people will see these players with these really, really great mechanics and think entry.
Yeah.
Whereas there are a lot of people that don't necessarily work like that. Like I had a player named Stubiak on a team forever ago where we tried him on entry for a while, didn't really work, and so we put him on flex, which still allowed him to frag out. It allowed his mechanics to shine, but he wasn't in a spot where he needed to open up the round or dictate the pace.
Yeah, it's just one of those
it was
things.
a lot better for him.
Like, some players just don't have the temperament, and I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that mechanics do not equal role, because
Yes.
you can have super passive players that are mechanically nasty, or, you know, Young is a great example. He was a goated support player for NA, for EG. For Young, I wouldn't say, oh, he's nasty, put him on the entry. No, he's really good at those clutch situations, those late round situations. He's good at using his util. He's good on the SMG-11. Like, he was in the best position for him. Or, like, Dream's another good example. I don't think Dream's going to find nearly as much success on entry or second entry or flex as he will a hard support role. You know, it's just one of those things where it's like different players have different tendencies, and you got to separate the mechanics there. I did want to talk briefly about Gang versus Centenegra Esports, although not too much, because frankly it was a pretty stompy game, honestly. There's a few rounds.
What happened there. I'm not gonna lie.
Kool-Aid and Co. pretty much just stomped on attack, I want to
tracks.
say. And then Centenegra brought it back 2 rounds on their attacking side, but it just was not enough to stop. And then with the just pure talent on GGG, they cleared him out eventually. It was just too hard of a start for CN to really get anything going.
Mhm.
I didn't see any individual like pop offs or moments that really made me believe they could do anything too dangerous later down the line.
Right.
Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Like, I mean, Karn and Co does that constantly. I joked about it because I didn't have them making a deep run in Xenon, but they did really well against Chunner and like showed some really good resiliency in their play day as well, which was pretty impressive as well.
Yeah. I still, I still don't like fully believe that I'm not dreaming right now because Chunner being in Element One is kind of funny.
Trevnak was
Although
popping off.
he
Trevnak was
was,
the one doing really well for that team. It was Mikey and Whitlock were kind of really struggling for a large portion of that game, and by the time that Mikey started getting going, the damage was already done. The lead was too
yeah,
great, and then Whitlock just never found his footing. I think he was
yeah,
one in something until at
yeah.
least the last round of the game.
I think Whitlock, if I recall, like he was in Challenger League for forever, but it was on teams like
Karn and
unemployment.
Co. Yeah.
And he has not been in high level competitive for a hot minute, if I recall. So
Yeah.
he has to kind of like get back into the swing of things on in a pretty weird team environment, I would say.
Yeah.
In Element One, even, which is an added layer of pressure.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly quick schedule. It's very easy to forget it. I was looking at the schedule trying to figure out when's the best time to ask for interviews because obviously, but it's really easy to forget. We have like bursts of 3 play days, then a 2 day break, then 3 play days, and then a two
Yeah,
day break, and that's just how this tournament's going. And we're going to be in playoffs pretty quick. So if you don't get up to speed fast, you're gonna get left behind, and
yeah,
like those slates, like I mentioned, they're gonna steal your spot. You're gonna get eliminated. You're gonna get upset by teams that you probably shouldn't, and so you just gotta get up to speed really quickly. And I think that's where Chunner is really gonna have issues because it's a pug stack. It was supposed to be a meme. Senville 1v3 after like 2 rounds of 4v5s to even be here. Like it was supposed to
yeah,
end in quals, and they're still here.
yeah.
So they've got a lot of catching up to do to become a real
They do.
team.
They
I'm
do.
kind of curious how much influence Gunner has, or if he's just like the mascot or the figurehead of this team, or if he's actually providing some insight. I know a lot of those NAL people are kind of like becoming temporary coaches for Element One, like this is Football Manager or something. Fett was talking about it. Gunner's got his team. Mr. B was trying to get reality TV in there. So it's just kind of my question is how much influence does Gunner
Yeah,
have? Because that's the X factor of like how deep Chunner can go as a team.
yeah. I'm not sure either how much influence he has. If I recall, like Wikipedia had him listed as a manager
Yeah,
for the roster, so I would kind of assume that is where he
it
sat,
ends.
especially after what happened with reality TV in the first qualifier. I'd imagine that Gunnar just wanted to play it safe and just manage the team, get all the players together,
Yeah.
and then just run it like that.
I don't think
But
that doesn't necessarily preclude him from practice or like
it does
coaching or
not.
be serving as the coach for game days, for instance. So if he was
Yeah,
serving as a coach and he only talked during timeouts and even saying nothing like nice or well played, he would be safe in theory from
yes,
causing disqualification.
yeah,
So in that case, like he could provide some insight. But I really don't know. That's like an X factor. I kind of have a similar question about SSG Academy as well.
yeah.
Like, what's the call out factor? How much is ball out helping, or is he
So
just like supervising and Wafer and Smidasu are doing the heavy lifting, and then call out just drops down from the heavens? Your roam clear is weak. Gains, and he's just out again.
yeah,
Like if
I
if
think
that's all
it's
he's doing, like I'm kind of
yeah. I
whelmed
think
by
it's
SFG ACAD, but if it's more than that, well, now you actually have a
yeah.
like Element One winning team.
Yeah, I think it's probably mostly Smitty and Wafer that are doing the coaching for that squad.
Okay, yeah,
Um, is like both of them were in Pro League for a pretty significant amount of time, and
yeah,
Smitty was on Aerial Rise in Challenger League for a long time, and they were pretty consistently near the top, if not at the top of the CL.
Yeah.
And in the last stage of Challenger League, they were the only team to take a map off of reality TV in the entire season in the grand finals,
Yeah.
which is no easy feat.
It was also Bank, which was
Yes.
shaping up to be a pretty strong map for reality TV. It wasn't one that you would expect them to really falter on, but they lost it 7-2. Now, granted, there is the added fact that Aerial Rise took reality TV to that map in the second to last play day of the series of the regular season, and they lost 7-4. So if they just mad counter stratted, okay, sure, fair play. But I think there's probably a little bit more than that. So
Probably.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, 7-4 is also not like
it's not a
a
bad
bad
loss.
scoreline. Like
No.
it's fairly close, I would say.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about some of these upcoming matches, because I know that
Yeah.
we have the second play day of the series coming up,
We do.
in which we've got SSG Academy versus Outlast. We've got Carry the Boats versus Osiris, which is XS2, stay safe, or X2, S2. We've got Taken Kings versus 1HP, and then we've got Aerial Arise versus Sway. Right off the bat, I'm looking at this, and my match of the day is a tie between Carry the Boats versus Bio and Taking Kings versus 1HP. You just look at those two games in particular, and you look at the quality of those teams, and you say, if this is a stomp, one of y'all fucked up somewhere, and we need to have a talk, because the levels of these teams is actually comparable. All four of those teams are what you'd expect to be a playoff team. Carry the Boats, I'm not going to have them winning the whole damn thing, but they're going to be at least in the semis for my money, because there's just too much Pro League talent. I know Merc has been replaced by Spiker due to reasons outside the game, but even still, you just look at that. You look at that team, even if they're pug stacking, the pure talent and just coordination that they should have in theory always makes them a threat, and you have to reach a certain threshold to even beat them. Osiris has got Bio. They're always a consistent top performer. They won't win it. They'll probably make it to playoffs, lose in quarters, have a clean exit. Some of those players will show talent or promise, and they'll get brought up by the higher ranked teams to fill in for whoever gets raised up to Pro League. That's kind of Bio's role.
That is just kind of where Bio sits. He finds really good talents, and then people just steal it from them, and that's just kind of where it goes.
Yeah, he makes them good enough, and that's where it goes. And you know what? You gotta respect it. I will say, I'm curious if he's going to be on Hard Breach, or if he's still going to be on that flex util removal role that he's been on for years now. That was even back during the 20-second meta. That's been a pet peeve of mine with Bio. Is just I don't hate the guy. I don't hate his role in the game. Well, I hate the operators he played, because he would always be on the Ashe Zoe in the 20-second meta over absolute gunners, and I'd be like, Bio, please just play the Thermite, put fucking Reverse or whoever it was back then on the Zofia. It'll work better for everyone, So I'm curious if he's still going to be on that role, or if he's going to fully step back and really let some of these young gunners be on those more fragging oriented operators, because he's got the experience to play that hard support role, and obviously it's not preferred because you don't get to pop off as much, but I think Bio's on the tail end of his career. Let's be real. He's played since he was playing since year 2. All right, he was playing on Infamy in year 2. The dude's been around for a while. He's not getting back up there. What he's doing now is raising the next generation. So just full commit to it. Full commit to the role.
Yeah.
Teach those guys how to be good flex players, good support players, and you take up hard support. And I think that'll put Osiris in a really strong position. And I think if that's the case, they do have a good chance of beating Carry the Boats. I think they're one of the teams that can do that.
So they have Sneeze, Fens, and Snoopy on the lineup, all of whom are known to take up that more entry role.
Yeah.
And so it would make a lot less sense for Bio to be up there. I'd imagine he's going to be either soft support or hard support.
Yeah.
Just with the players that he has, although obviously we're not going to know until later tonight officially, I don't think. There's also the possibility that Rudy makes an appearance, as he is one of the substitutes.
Yeah.
But even so, I don't think Rudy is really going to be put on those fragging roles either.
Yeah, he wasn't really there on those positions back when he was playing on Beast Coast either. Although I will say Arrow is on this team, so if Arrow's there, maybe maybe he's just your hard support, and like Bio is still on one of those util clear positions. Which, if he's on that Flores, I can't hate. That's like where you'd want him. But like
Yeah.
it is what it is. Talking about the other match though, because there's a bit more to talk about here because these two teams have been playing in a lot more tournaments and we've seen a lot more of them, and there's a lot just more data. We've got Taken Kings and we've got 1HP, and they've both made a roster change, but they're both coming into this like as pretty strong contenders, anyways.
Yeah.
Like, what are you expecting from this match?
I'm going to say a 1 HP. One, because that's the precedent that has been set for these two teams, but
Yeah.
also because I think the roster moves shake out in 1 HP's favor.
Okay.
There were a couple. So obviously, they replaced Doug on Taken Kings as the old HK Rebels, now Osiris roster.
Yeah.
And they picked up Scoob recently for that role. If I recall, mostly because they wanted like someone with a lot of mechanical skill and a lot of mechanical depth on the roster.
Yeah. Also vibes. Just it was also a personality shift, which can't be understated, but it very much was just like a bit more flicky leany, I suppose.
Yeah. And then 1HP picked up BJL. Yeah. And I think that the roster moves shake out in 1HP's favor because I think there is some shot calling and adaptability issues on Taken Kings.
Yeah.
And there were players that they were trialing behind the scenes, from what I was able to figure out from talking to people, that would have been arguably better for that. Although they ended up going with Scoob, which not trying to imply that Scoob is bad at all or that the team is bad because of this change at all. But I'm more saying I think that they could have gone with someone with a little bit more ability to shot call and adapt on the fly.
Yeah.
And arguably been better off. Although, again, we'll have to see because I believe this is going to be one of the first game days with Scoob, although they did play in
They played in the game
Summer
Rogue
Splash.
and they made finals, but there was a lot of substitutes. Like, I know Rai was out for a little bit, so their coach Wumbo was standing in, and then Rai was, or no, I think Rai was just out the entire time, and it was just Wumbo subbing in for the entire tournament. In which case, like, that's not your core five. You made the grand finals. It was max OT 1v1 to decide the grand finals. So it wasn't like you got blown out or anything, but it wasn't your core five, and it's always a bit fluky when that happens, and it raises some questions about like, oh, how much does this result count? Mm-hmm. You don't have to ask that about 1HP. They got upset by TK and Silly Geese. That's like one of those teams that's always going to upset one of these top like T2, T3 teams. Taken Kings had a frankly relatively easy bracket, especially because they didn't even face Dilemma. Dilemma got upset by Aggro and Method. So they had to face Method, which, if we're being honest, is
the much easier game.
Yeah, it's the easier game. I am kind of curious. How do you rate BJL, especially being slotted into this 1 HP roster? Like, do you think there's anything happening role wise or like vocality wise there, or do you just think it's kind of minus Kirk plus BJL, whatever?
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a bit of a hot take, but I think he is a downgrade, not in the sense that he is bad, but in the sense that Kirk is just really fucking good.
Okay.
Like, BJL's good, but Kirk is just, like, a step above, and the personality and chemistry kind of stuff that was going on with him on the team was really good. And the role that he played was not something that's easy to find in a lot of people, and BJL, unlike Kirk, is not really, like, an entry-type player, because 1HP often use, like, people call it the Trident kind of method, where you had Twist as the kind of tip of the Trident, then Aimkey and Kirk on either side, and they did most of the fragging, and then Skunky and Big Guy would kind of clean up whatever was left, depending on what was needed.
Yeah.
But now, instead of having a Trident, you have more of, like, one of the things that, like, you eat within a barbecue restaurant.
Yeah,
And not to say that not to say it's a bad roster change. I don't think it is. I think it's going to shake up how the roles work. I think it's going to shake up how the team works. But it's not bad. And if they can make it work, which I have faith in to do, is they have, I believe it was Cohen as the coach, and having casted GPX for a very long time, when they were around, Cohen's no slouch when it comes to his knowledge of the game, and I'm sure he and Big Guy are going to be able to make that work. But I think it is going to be a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, I also think just when I interviewed Amkey, he did mention that BJL brings a lot of vocality, which apparently is super helpful because I know Kirk was one of those like big voices on the team. So losing that voice is really not good, but it's almost acceptable in a sense if you get someone to replace that with another big voice. And I know he said that the roles were shifting a little bit and it was taking some getting used to, but it wouldn't be too detrimental. But that's also a player speaking, so with all due respect, you're always the grass is always greener where you're at. So unless it's like so obvious, like, oh geez, we lost Prime Pengu. I wonder if that'll go wrong. Probably, but in 90% of other cases, the players are always going to be like, no, we went out. So as far as Taking King goes, or you finish.
Like I said, I don't think it's a bad roster change at all. I just think it's gonna be very, very. I think the team's gonna look different, but still good.
Yeah.
Just with the way the roles work, and with him being vocal, I do think that is going to help. Like as an AGL, the thing that I want the most, that I have the hardest time finding in a lot of players, is vocality, especially vocality in ways that make sense.
Yeah.
Especially if shot calling can come from that vocality, that's always very, very helpful. And so if he's bringing that like Kirk was, then I don't think it's going to be like a super, super downgrade.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a downgrade in the sense that the system has to change now than like the player being.
Yeah. And then as far as Taking King goes, I think Scoob, from what we saw, actually thought it in pretty good. Just from Game Rogue and everything. I don't think they changed roles for Game Rogue while Rai was out. And that's also like, from what I understand, Rai is effectively the primary IGL, even though everyone's supposed to be pretty vocal on that team.
Yeah.
So like effectively you had your coach in for your primary IGL and you still made the grand finals and Scoob was still doing pretty good. I was working my way through the semifinals against Team Cruelty, and Taking Kings were looking good. They're looking real solid, and Scoob was popping off. So I don't think he was a bad pickup.
Yeah, the benefit of Scoob for Doug is that they play more or less the same kind of like fragger flex role, or Scoob can play that rather. He's a renaissance man in terms of roles. I've seen him play literally everything and do well with it. And so whereas, like we were saying, 1HP is going to have to get used to some role swaps, Taken Kings don't really have that issue. They can kind of slot Scoob into where Doug was and be just fine. There are definitely going to be things that are shaken up because Scoob is a player than Doug, meaning that there are going to be different tendencies and different ideas coming from that role. But role-wise, they're not going to have to change a whole lot to incorporate him into the system in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, I will also say, at least from Border, I was seeing some particularly interesting stuff from Taking Kings with their information blockers. They would make a little sandwich, like, base there. They would have 3 information blockers, like 3 mute jammers, all 3 ADSs. You don't, as an attacker, you don't know what's going on in that position, but you can't fucking clear it out, and like you have to face check it, and then you just have Scoob in that position. It's like, oh, face check Scoob. Yeah, let me just walk in there, sir. I'll win that 10 out of 10 times. Like, you know, it wasn't a fun situation to deal with, and it was a very hard obstacle to like possibly deal with. So if they've got more setups like that using those information blockers, I think Taking Kings, at least for this match, honestly, I might rate them higher, because just they don't have to do as much work as 1HP does for the roster change, and also they have more reps with their player on a game day environment because of Game Rogue, although, you know, substitute. So
technically, 1HP did come into their first open qualifier.
That is true.
So they did have the 8 games they played, plus
that
the 2.
Is true.
I think it was 2 close squad games. It might have only been 1. So they do have some recent game day experience, but not as recent as Taken Kings. Although
I also think Game Rogue was BO3 if memory serves, so that's more
Yes,
maps
it would have been.
for Taken Kings.
Yes.
Yeah. Although, if we want to go over the other two games of the second playday, I think we could do that. I don't think SSG ACAD versus Outlast is particularly noteworthy. Sorry, Outlast, but like, let's be real.
Yeah.
You're gonna get shit stomped.
I don't think that I don't think Outlast are a team that's just gonna roll over and die.
No.
I think they're going to put up a fight. I don't think the round count's going to be close, but I think some of the rounds are going to be close. Like I think it'll come down to a lot of like 2vx's or like really late round situations or like post plants. But I don't think the actual round count itself is going to show a close game.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think SGA can take it, but Outlast are going to put up a fight.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be one of those situations like the year 2 season 1 grand finals of like Nesk versus Penta, where it's like you got 10-0'd round count wise, you got 2-0'd map count, 10-0'd round count, or 10-1'd round count, and that one round was Nesk popping off. But it was actually just a bunch of like clutch rounds and like really close 2v2, 1v1 situations that just all went Penta's way. And like I'm expecting a similar situation here.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is like kind of what you expect from SSG ACAD. I do not question, because I got flack for this a while ago by being like I'm whelmed by SSG ACAD. I don't question their talent level. What I question is like crunch time, whether or not they can win the championship. They'll make it to the semis. They can make it to the finals. I just don't see them. I see them in a similar position as wildcards, just like the next level up. You know, you can make these deep runs and you're like at the top of this level. But I can't envision you winning the trophy. So up until that point, like I'm going to be in your corner saying like this is an SSG win, this is an SSG win. It's just when grand finals rolls around, I'm going to dip out. So like that's where SSG ACAD is for my mind. And like it's just a matter of call out gains.
Yeah,
to change
I think if you look at them, like it's the old
LG core
Luminosity core. It's the old Luminosity gaming core, and
they made CL playoffs
against them. Yeah, they did, and I've played against them multiple times, and they're scary. And you have the addition of Snake, who made it to the main stage at the Young Shipping Major.
Yeah,
with TSM and performed fairly well, if I recall, as well as Mohesi, who somehow helped Mirage get to a major, even though they didn't get out of the group stage.
That shit was a fluke. Mirage was a fluke. They abused a best of one format, and that's why they went 0-6 as soon as they had to face actual competition. They abused the BO1 format in NAL and got mad lucky and like barely qualified with a horrible like win-loss ratio, made it to Yangshiping, got washed out by actual teams in like an actual environment as soon as the pressure hit. And obviously there's been news and like people talking about how there's bad org stuff going on in the background. That didn't help. But your results are your results. I don't give a shit whether or not you had chicken nuggets for dinner last night or fucking chicken tenders or tacos. Like you still lost 0-6.
I do think that like obviously yes, they did lose 0-6, but the point's more that like Mohesi knows what he's doing and he has that experience. Even if you get shit stomped on LAN, you can learn a lot from that if you have the mind for it, which from what I can tell from him, I would say that he probably does. And then you have Smitatius, I think is how you pronounce it, on that team, who again, was on the Aerial Rise roster that took the map off of one reality TV in this Challenger League playoffs. As well as Wafer, who was on Astralis for a really long time.
For the SI run. I'm pretty sure he got brought on almost like exclusively during the period leading up to and during SI23.
He was a top 4 coach in the world after that tournament, right? And that is not nothing.
And he's working with Call Out again.
Yes.
So, I rate the coaching staff.
Yeah, and Call Out is listed as a coach, so I'd assume he does have some influence over coaching the roster or potentially even helping the coaching staff out a bit, just like with coaching them to get better at their jobs.
Yeah.
That is something that could be pretty scary, and I'd imagine with that kind of lineup, if Call It is involved, it's only going to get better as the tournament progresses.
Yeah, and I will also say, now that I'm thinking about it, Mohesi does have ties with Call Out from their time on Ape, I believe it was. So he is also he's an early disciple of Call Out.
Yes.
He's spent months and years under this master, a disciple of Call Out. I believe he's gonna let his nuts hang. At least for now.
Yeah.
At least until playoffs, they're just gonna turn left, knock some people over casually. I'm curious more about when the pressure hits for these players.
If they got, it's gonna be in semis. I think if they got, it's gonna be in semis. I think they're absolutely going to be. I think they're gonna be one of the 3-0 teams for the playoffs. If I recall on CDAPS's prediction thing, that's where I had them landing was 3-0 in like the Swiss stage, and then. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in that playoff stage because we don't know who's in the playoff stage yet.
Yeah.
But I do think they're going to make it out either in 3-0 or 3-1 fashion. Like, I think they're going to be one of the better teams.
Bracket. If they get really unlucky, they could go up against someone like Carry the Boats, which always has a puncher's chance. Can lose to any of these like top teams. Can win against any of these top teams. So if SSG ACAT gets unlucky, say they get upset once and like. Carry the Boats gets upset once, and then that's a matchup. That's a 1-1 matchup of SSG ACAT versus Carry the Boats. That's scary. That's a very scary situation. But
or even like I would say that a team like Dilemma also has a pretty solid chance of knocking off their heels, or even Wildcard on a really good day could give them a run for their money, or they might also just get slighted because Natural makes a fool of us all.
He's all natty. All right, we want to talk about Aerial Arise versus Sway real quick, and then just close it there. Cause
I wonder which team is going to win that one.
Yeah, no disrespect to Sway. Actually, you know what? Take it for disrespect. I don't care either way. Look, I'm pretty sure I was on a team with Benny as like a analyst or some shit a year or two back, but like honestly speaking, y'all barely made it in, and everyone kind of went, I can't believe Sway is in. Now you're in, and you're facing, for my money, the first seed. You're facing the best team in the tournament.
Yeah. There's a concept that I think applies to this where I don't necessarily think they won that game so much as 1 HP Black lost that game.
Yeah.
Which I would also say is probably the case for Slates getting in.
Yeah.
But I think Monkey Business was a team that had going 0-3 in my predictions. Or now Sway, formerly Monkey Business. They get picked up by that org, which I didn't know still existed until that happened. Fun fact.
Yeah, they do have Glamoji as a substitute, so I think they've got...
absolutely, that brings them to the victory.
Yeah, no, 100%. From the bleachers, he's going to help them. I just...
Like, you're going up against what is, in the opinions of a lot of people, like a bottom pro league team. As a pug stack that only got in because another team was like not playing well and arguably throwing.
Yeah, like one HP Black choked both quals. I think that's fair to say, and
they did.
Slate has like proven themselves to be like worth it after that win against Wildcard. I would say it's Sway's turn, but I think this is a bitch of an opponent to do it against.
Yeah.
Like even if you are a good team,
yeah,
this isn't the opponent that you're probably going to be able to prove it against. And I just think, like, honestly...
Like, Slate had a team that can be, like, really inconsistent on game day as their first opponent.
Yeah.
So it was either going to be a really difficult game or, like, a mostly difficult game. And then you got the mostly difficult game, but, like... Their combination of Freak and Quartz and Tra, all with guns in their hands. I've scrimmed against that before, and it's one of the scariest fucking things I've ever done.
It's just not...
Trust me. I've played entry against Freak, man. I have numb flashbacks every night.
I also think it's just like... This is a bit more of an abstract point, relative to some of his other stuff, but Aerial Arise coming into this, the reason why they're my number 1 seed is because they have been playing in everything they can get their fucking hands on in this offseason. Yep. Teams like Gang Gang Gang, Carry the Boats, freaking Space Station Academy, they played in the major quals. Kool-Aid, like, was subbing in or whatever the hell was going on for XGS on Gang 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 Academy. Whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't care if they've been scrimming, the game day reps hit different. Like, that's why I put so much stock in them. And Aerial Arise has a motherfucking truckload of them.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's actually why, in an interview with Caliber Jacob, Dream said that the reason they played in SCS was because they wanted game day reps. Because even though it's like T3, it's still valuable to get that experience just playing on game day. Because the settings are the same as like a game day rules scrim, but like the feeling of having that pressure, especially if the game is being streamed.
Oh, especially if you're a favorite.
So different.
If you do something dumb and you get clapped for it, everyone starts laughing at you because you're a pro league player getting clapped for making a dumb play in a T3 tournament where you should have won that because you were better. Like,
and Aerial Rise has that experience. They have a lot of that like recent experience of playing game day, unstreamed game days, no less, where they are the favorite, and they have gotten clowned on in some of them, and so they have that kind of experience with dealing with that and with taking that pressure and thriving in it in recent games.
Even making like big comebacks. Yes. I believe it was XGS where they came, or no, it was the Cinco de Mayo Game Rogue where they were down 5-1 against 1 HP of the Grand Finals. Map
they were down 6-0 against
it was 6-0.
1 HP, and they won 6 defenses, and then
it's even worse then. Like,
attack, and then a defense and an attack to win in overtime.
Like, that's not. Doing that in scrims is one thing. Doing that on game day in map 2, like, you have map 3 right there. Like, you have a safety cushion. You still have to win the fucking map, and like one slip up is all it takes. And they had to clutch up some of those rounds, if memory serves. So,
and it's against 1 HP, which
also not a slouch.
Turk even, which is that's not an easy game at all for anyone.
And that's kind of a difference maker for me. That's why I have them so high, is because like they've been through those experiences in crunch time. Like SSG ACAD, I ain't seen them in SCS, I guess we did see him in SCS. We haven't seen him in XGS. We haven't seen him in FETS Fiesta. We kind of did, but not really. Like, we've seen some players, but not really. Like, we're not seeing SSG Academy, the team, in FETS Fiesta. We're not seeing them in these events where they really get to cut their teeth and, like, be in these events and kind of get clowned on, take their lumps, take their hits, and, like, effectively get hazed until they're conditioned enough to actually win this and survive the pressure. Aerial Rise has been in that situation. They have the reps. Honestly, I suspect Poison's kind of fucking pissed because he lost FETS Fiesta. They placed second, or no, they placed first in XGS, but like they lost FETS Fiesta against RTV. Like, what a statement that would have been if you won FETS Fiesta against old RTV plus NJR. That beating that team is a statement. That's like 90% pro league players at this point, and a coach. You beat them, you go, I'm the best fucking team now. I'm the best T2 team. I should be where RTV is now, which is in pro league. So I think they've got a bit of a fire for revenge. They got a taste for blood right now.
I think so as well.
I think they got the extra motivation that just some of these other teams don't have.
Sway's the first one standing in the way.
Yeah. Sorry guys, just try to make it quick, merciless. I
don't want next time.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think.
I will say though, in Sway's favor, they do get an easier game after this. They are going to play against another team that is down 0-1.
Yeah.
Which they could get unlucky.
They could get wild card.
Or they could get really lucky and get For My Gang.
Or they could get, frankly, Cintanegra also is in a similar boat, I would say. Like, no offense to the MXPL teams, y'all are great. Our fond memories, scribbing, Skimsy, and all that stuff, but, y'all just different play style and also different level down there. You gotta be... The goal right now is beating EU leftovers in MXPL. Once we do that, we can start talking. Until Revan can't compete in MXPL, or I guess LATAM, until then, like, there's still going to be a bit of a difference. There's going to be a gap.
Now, I think P wants to end this soon, but I do have one question for you before we end, which is, what is your what if team from like the closed qualifiers that didn't make it, like that you'd think would do better than one of the teams that did make it?
The obvious answer is reality TV, right? The obvious answer is, Chunner Esports, great narrative, for like, ha ha ha, guys, look at Sandville in Challenger League, ha ha, isn't it funny? So like the obvious answer is reality TV with Teddy and Waltz and God, was it Tristan? I don't even fucking remember. It's like it's all those guys. That's the obvious answer because I think they would have been a legit top contender, whereas Chunner's kind of like a middle of the pack deal, especially with Mr. B doing Football Manager behind them. Gotta rate that highly because Mr. B is smart as hell. Yeah. Let me check the qualifiers because I can't remember the teams off the top of my head. I think Bone Zone could have been another good one. Everyone was hyping up Penguin and Bone and Nexo. Silly Geese is another good shout out.
I think Silly Geese is my number one. Is having known a lot of those players for a while and having played rank with them quite a bit, there is not a slouch on that team, and I genuinely think that when he gets in there, TK could be one of the best IGLs in T2.
Like, the competition isn't that stiff. Let's be honest. He's probably top 7 already because there's at least there's probably max 10.
But I actually had the opportunity to watch a game day they did in the Game Rogue tournament, and Cheese was just bullying Wildcard with like the TCSG. Like, I don't know if the stream caught up, but there was a round where he just peaked like main lobby door in Oregon, and he just one-tapped like Bino with the TCSG, and then he got like a 4K with the Blitz pistol.
Yeah,
that's your hard support.
Yeah, right? I think Silly Geese is a big what if because they got DQs from first qual because Uzi was underage, and then they didn't make it with Matumba. I think it's between them, Reality TV, and Bone Zone. I don't know as much about Bone Zone, and it sounds to me like they're in a similar position as Chunner is, where it was like a meme team and it would have been really funny TM, but like how deep of a run they made, probably not that deep as soon as you'd start facing the real teams. Mm-hmm. So like similar vein as Chunner. Silly Geese and RTV are probably the top two.
I think Reality TV would have been like a contender to not win the whole thing, but get really deep.
Yeah.
And I think Silly Geese would have like
been a new T2 staple, I think.
I think they would have gotten like close to the playoffs / made playoffs. It would be either 2-3 or 3-2, I think.
Yeah. And
then they'd go out in the quarters.
Yeah, but I think that's good because that would be like a lot of their first cracks at high spawn.
Absolutely.
Peak. It would be their first crack at T2, like proper crack, and I think you could gain a lot of experience from that and build off of that.
Especially like especially like with to bring him up again. Like, I've seen the work that TK puts in. If he gets shit on in if he gets shit on in Element 1, in Element 2, he's coming back with a fucking vengeance.
Yeah. I mean, like, dude's smart as hell, works hard.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He knows what he wants, so...
His shit talk's also really funny in interviews, which...
Oh, yeah. It's watered down. Like, one of these days, I'm going to get him to crack and just have him speak his full mind when I hit the record button.
The stuff that he says when cameras aren't rolling is really funny.
He's fucking hilarious, dude. It's great. Anyways,
I believe there was an interview as well. I think like where he was like in like the rank game. Like
he did a Game Rogue interview 1v4 in the middle of my fucking interview. I'm out here stressing, cutting ums and ahs, and the dude's just popping off casual. So, dude's insane. Anyways, this is probably gonna be the first one of. We need to come up with a podcast title. Just a little bit.
We'll figure it out.
I've got a litany of esports related JPEGs for new backgrounds, so don't worry about that. This Merc image is not going to be staring into your soul for the next one. But
could be. Actually, I think we're gonna have a guest for the next.
We're gonna need another square. So
Merc
cannot stare into your soul. We need a third square for our upcoming guest for the next one. But we'll see you then. And until then, have a good one. Keep sieging. I don't have an outro.